Hey guys, John here. So, over the past couple of years, we've gotten a lot of questions sent into the show about movie studios owning movie theaters. Just this past Wednesday, a viewer super chatted in asking about the chances of Sony buying Regal Cinemas. And they generally break down into one of the following three questions. Number one, why haven't studios owned movie theaters before? Number two, why can they own them now? And number three, why don't they own them now? So let's start with the first question. Why haven't the studios owned movie theater chains up till now? Well, in actuality, studios once did own local movie theaters way back in the day, but that practice was stopped by something called the Paramount Decrees. Now, the Paramount Decrees is something you might have heard of. They were a set of antitrust consent decrees issued by the United States government in 1948. The decrees were issued against the major Hollywood studios, which at the time were accused of engaging in monopolistic practices that stifled competition in the film industry. Now, the Paramount Decrees were the result of a long-running legal battle that began in 1938 when the United States Department of Justice, the DOJ, filed an antitrust suit against major Hollywood studios such as Paramount Pictures, Lowe's, Warner Brothers, RKO, and 20th Century Fox and others. The DOJ accused the studios of engaging in anti-competitive practices, including block booking, which required movie theaters to book a package of films in order to get access to the studio's most popular films. Imagine, if you will, that Disney had the power to tell movie theaters that the only way that they'll get to have Avengers 5 in their theaters is if they also committed to playing Lightyear and Strange World in their theaters for 6 months, even though nobody wanted to see them. The studios fought the case for several years, but in 1948, the court issued the Paramount Decrees, which prohibited the studios from engaging in block booking and other anti-competitive practices. The decree also required that the studios divest themselves of their movie theaters chains. So, in essence, in 1948, it became illegal for studios to own theaters. Okay, so that's why they haven't owned theaters lately, but let's move on to the second question. Why are they allowed to own movie theaters now? Well, in 2018, the Department of Justice announced that it would seek to have the Paramount Decrees modified or vacated, arguing that they were no longer necessary in light of the current state of the film industry and massive changes in the marketplace. In 2020, the DOJ and the National Association of Theater Owners, also known as NATO, reached an agreement to dissolve the Paramount Decrees. The decrees were officially dissolved in late 2020, and the studios are no longer bound by its terms. So, with the marketplace being so much different now than it was in the 1940s, the decrees were deemed unnecessary, and thus the studios can, if they want to, own theaters. So that brings us to the third question. If the Paramount Decrees are no longer an issue, why don't studios buy movie theaters? The shorter answer is because they don't want to. You see, movie studios may not want to own movie theaters for several reasons. One of the main reasons is that the movie theater business is highly competitive and operates, as I've told you before, on razor-thin margins. Running a movie theater requires a significant investment in real estate, equipment, staff, and it can be difficult, almost impossible, to generate a consistent profit. Also, with the legal and regulatory compliances, owning movie theaters would require a lot more attention and expertise which movie studios might not have, because it's a completely different business that they don't know how to run. Also, it would divert the focus of movie studios from their main objective, which is the production of and the distribution of movies. So, they don't want to get involved in movie theater management. Now, some people might say, but John, wouldn't it be better for the studios to own the theaters? Because that way, they keep the box office money and they don't have to split it with the theater chain. Well, that sounds good, but that's not how it works. See, if a studio bought a theater chain, then their theater division would still be required to keep standard percentages of the box office receipts, or else the division would go bankrupt and quickly become a massive money loser for the studios. Not to mention, just because the Paramount Decrees are no longer in force, that doesn't mean there aren't still some very strict anti-competitive laws and rules in place. If a studio's theater division didn't keep a percentage of the box office for the studio's own movies, then they wouldn't be allowed to keep a percentage of the other studio's movies playing in their theaters. That would have the DOJ jumping down their throats real quick with anti-competitive lawsuits. Now, you might say, then why doesn't the studio only play their own movies in the theaters? Well, again, that theater division would go bankrupt really quick without enough product to keep audiences coming to their theaters. So, The bottom line is that the studios don't want to own theaters because there's no money in it. It's incredibly resource intensive, and they're more than happy to let the theater chains do all of that on their own. I hope that gives you a little bit of background information on this and a little bit of insight. My name's John Campea, and we'll see you next time.